Welcome to Share, a podcast production of Amethyst Recovery Centers. I'm your host, Kabir Singh. At the top of each episode, we'd like to remind our listeners that addiction is treatable and recovery is possible. If you or a loved one needs help with addiction, call Amethyst today at 855-80-SOBER or visit us online at amethystrecoverycenters.com. They've been popularized by an old television show, but it's probably best not to try them at home. That is, without the help of a professional. Today on Share, we're talking about interventions. When a loved one needs help, it might feel natural to bring the family member together to confront them about their substance use disorder. But the truth is, without a carefully planned intervention, the person struggling with substance abuse might be driven away from accepting help. Today, we welcome Pejman Alaghamandan, an interventionist and recovery coach based in Los Angeles, California. Pejman himself is in recovery, and we're going to hear his story and learn what makes an intervention successful. Pejman, it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to Share.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. What an honor.
Yes, of course. I think I originally became aware of you through Frankie. You do know her. She was on an episode of Share as well, and she does fabulous work in the area that she does. She spoke very highly of you, and so I'm glad to finally connect here with some more folks on the West Coast.
One of my best friends.
Oh yeah, she's got. I was a little jealous on that episode. Just what she does and gets to go out to Hawaii and things like that and take her clients, or however she chooses to describe them, her peers out there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Have you ever joined on any of that?
I have not yet, but I'm definitely contemplating going there because it's been a long time since I've been to Hawaii, and who better to go with than somebody like Frankie?
Yeah, of course. And I heard she's moving there too, so I'm even sort of more envious. But all that aside, before interventions, before the life coaching that she was doing, and before interventions for you, you're a self-disclosed person in recovery yourself.
Yes. Yep.
So what brought you into recovery?
Well, what brought me into recovery is I was 35 years old, homeless pretty much for half of the year of being 35. And I ended up at the doorsteps of a recovery home. It was a Persian-based recovery home that was out of Orange County, California. And when I was there, being a homeless man, nothing was working for me in my life. So I finally decided to do the thing that I feared the most, and that was to reach out and ask for help. And that's because I was having some health conditions and living conditions. I was living out of my car. Addiction and alcoholism had engulfed my whole life, and I was drowning. I was drowning in alcoholism, drowning in addiction. I didn't know how to stop.
Would you say that I can identify heavily with what you said, even the age at which you found yourself at the doorsteps of that treatment center is quite similar to myself. 34 is sort of the end of the road for me. Perhaps there's some more similarities often, as I found in recovery. We are more alike than different. I know for myself, there was certainly cultural and societal pressures, measuring up and the like. Was it an option for you? You start perhaps as I did, 15, 16, sort of drinking, smoking, hanging out, and then, it goes on from there.
Well, what nationality are you? If I would guess, I'd say Indian.
You're correct. Yeah. And even furthermore, a deeper dive, I'm Punjabi. So
I have a lot of Punjabi friends. Yes. Being a Persian, I'm Persian. I was born in Germany and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. And growing up in Utah for the first portion of my life, I always felt uncomfortable in my skin. I was always comparing my insides to people's outsides and losing every time. And so I did everything to try to fit in with them. I dressed like them. I talked like them. I listened to the same music as them, but I wasn't them. And so I was definitely uncomfortable with who I was. And so at a very, very early age, I started experimenting with drugs with the other outcasts because there was just a few of us, but we were in Utah and we knew that we could congregate behind the Mormon church and and do what we were doing. However, when I moved to California, it wasn't like people weren't already experimenting during the time. We moved to California when I was 15 years old. And there was people that were already doing a lot of drugs and alcohol. I mean, this was the high school experience. Between 15 and 16, kids are just having fun. And I'm not going to lie, like I was having fun. I was going to the high school parties and drinking and doing, some other things too, like the dry goods, the weed, and even some cocaine. But I remember I had a very, very traumatic car accident that when I was 17, where I was hungover. I was partying the night before, but I was a little hungover the next day and kind of foggy. And I was driving on my way to school, and a kid that was 14 years old came right out in front of my car, went over the windshield. Went over the hood of the car into the windshield. The windshield shattered, and the car crashed into another car. And this kid's body was flung over the top, head first into the ground. So, and he didn't die right away, but his mom took him off of life support about 4 days later because he would have been a complete vegetable. So like I had to carry this burden and this pain and this anguish and just massive amounts of emotions for the fact that this kid lost his life. This was like a very traumatic thing. It did become for me more of an excuse to use and drink in excess.
Yeah, that's a powerful life experience, and thank you for sharing that with us. I was unaware that you'd been through such a thing, and the other family as well. I have somebody close to me in recovery that had a very similar thing happen to them, and I've actually processed a bunch of that. So I without knowing you personally, I know what's involved in that. So I commend you in your own process of recovery, and likely plays into your service to others and being an interventionist. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I sense that there's a bigger picture here, which we're going to be getting to for sure. So, fast forward, you've now been in recovery for how many years?
Next month in June 16th, will be 14 years.
Okay, cool. So excellent. So that's I just had reached a 10-year point myself. So that's I can definitely relate to being in the double-digit category now. Not that really makes us exempt from anything, but it's a cool place to be. But so you when do you decide to be an interventionist? At what point does this strike you as, hey, this
okay? So the recovery home that I went to when I went at the age of 35, 36, there was a man that ran that place. He was this little Persian man, and he was like my little recovery, like he was like Yoda. He was really, really knowledgeable when it came to the recovery world. He just I would just sit in awe. Like after a while, when I got past my own barriers of not wanting to connect with this man, because I had met him 5 years before at a sober living that he had, but I wanted nothing to do with him. But being in my mid 30s at the time, I was watching this guy, and he would have these groups in this treatment center that he had. It was like a little recovery center, right? And he would sometimes, like when he saw that I was vibing with him, and I was like on board with recovery, once I actually like was really here to stay, he would sometimes tell me like, you want to come with me tonight? We're going to go to somebody's house. They're struggling. And we go to like some Persian family's house, and the kid was doing heroin in the bedroom or whatever. And so I just watch him. And we'd go in there first. We talked with the mother, which was like a pre-intervention, and get the whole lowdown and talk about the do's and don'ts and what we're going to do next. And then next thing you know, we go into the bedroom and talk to the kid himself. And I watched him in action. So that was like the first time where I got the idea. I think I wouldn't mind doing this, like where I could actually do this as like a professional. And shortly after, I went to school for drug and alcohol counseling. And when I did that, like I finished top of my class. It's kind of amazing when you stay sober, you can actually pay attention in class and do well and do well on your tests and everything. Finished top of my class, and then I wanted to go to school to become a counselor. I wanted to do case management and things like that. But later on, I realized like my calling is in the intervention field.
Right. So that was actually one of my questions. So you're additional to being an interventionist. Is that a certification in and of itself? Is there something involved with, I mean, or being the fact that you are an alcohol, drug, and counselor in effect perhaps makes you qualified?
Yes, there is a national intervention certification. I believe it's 80 hours, to be a certified professional interventionist. I think it's CPI is what it's called. I believe that's what, or CIP. Yeah, certified intervention professional.
Gotcha.
And that's what I believe it is. And that's based out of Philly, I believe. And yeah, I mean, I did my hours, and one of the reasons that I got trained by, I believe, one of the best interventionists in the field, and that would be Earl Hightower. He's really huge in the recovery community, but he's also just a world-renowned interventionist that's been doing this for at least 35 years. You know, I was trained directly under him, and I did my 2 years of supervision with him, meaning that every time there was a scenario or an intervention, I would call him and paint the picture of what I'm walking into and how I'm going to be going about it. And then he would just kind of supervise and tell me his ideas.
Were you yourself a recipient of an intervention when you got sober, when you got clean? Or
I was, in a sense, kind of, yes, I was, because my mother sat me down and said, "Your life isn't working for you. The gig is up. You can lie to me all you want, but I know what's going on. If you'd like, I would like to talk with you and my husband, which is my stepdad, and we have some ideas." And so I went and we sat down, and they kind of just, it looks sort of like a small little mini family intervention where they gave me some options. They told me like my life isn't working for me, and I wasn't on board with, at the time, I wasn't on board with what they wanted.
is there a difference? There's a lot of our listeners that are anchored into 12-step recovery. Is there a difference between a 12-step call and an actual intervention?
There is. Well, there's a lot of people. Yeah. So an intervention, obviously, you hire an interventionist. I mean, if it's just a family that's doing an intervention, then the family comes together and like they're trying to help their loved one, or or some friends come together and are trying to help their loved one. Well, they're not in the 12-step community, so it wouldn't be a 12-step call. 12-step call is like when, one alcoholic or another alcoholic catch wind of somebody that's perhaps, scenario, like drunk in a hotel room, needs to get help, doesn't know what to do with themselves. They're debilitated, so they need some assistance, and you go down and you do a 12-step call because it was communicated through the 12-step community or like through one of their 800 numbers. But like with a family, like that's not a 12-step call. And then if it's an interventionist, that's a professional who's trained in this field to intervene in somebody's life, and it takes a lot for them to have to put it all together. If there's a pre-intervention, these days it's been easy with Zoom, to just rather than meet with families, just meet with them online, and everybody talks about the actual intervention, how it's going to go down, depending on what style of intervention it is, and then going and doing it. And there's services that need to be, this costs. It takes time. It takes the professionals time, and so it's going to cost. Sometimes people do pro bono and or just or charge on a sliding scale, depending.
Gotcha. My sense about it was, as you just described, that the 12-step is encapsulated in that community, and it's not common. Perhaps I'll sort of use I statements. If I'm on a 12-step call, I might be stepping out of the boundaries of what's identified in 12-step by starting to involve families. And right, as a sponsor, I generally, to my sponsees, I generally don't communicate with their parents. Right, that's sort of a little taboo. I know it's a particular thing with those relationships. Some sponsors do, but generally we stay within the confines of 12-step recovery. So I'm happy you were able to sort of put some color on that matter.
Yeah.
So what do you think that some of the biggest mistakes are that families make while amidst an intervention? There's probably a lot of ways that things could go wrong, right? Love feelings. I mean, I've seen this show, and I don't want to just sum up that it's like the show that I've seen, right?
There's being a Persian man doing interventions. obviously the community calls me a lot, or my name gets thrown out a lot, especially out here in Los Angeles and Orange County. There's a lot of Persians that are suffering with addiction. So one of the things that goes wrong is that everything that was agreed upon with the families in advance, where they said, we'll listen to everything that you say, will go totally the wrong way, because they decide to, the codependency cape comes on, and this decide they want to be the interventionist, or they want to sit during the intervention, and rather than just say the minimal things that they're supposed to say, they want to start to conduct the whole process and take it over and be the saver. That, like, they're you know what, or they'll change their mind. They're not ready to give their loved one the ultimatum. They'll suddenly say, no, I'm not going to kick him out. I'm not going to throw him on the street. Like, and so what happens is they end up harboring the addict or the alcoholic in their house even longer. And the kid is basically, or whoever their loved one is basically the controller, the one that runs the show. Not because they want to be, it's because they've been spoiled so much that they just get to call the shots. And so the family member can just totally screw that up. That happens a lot.
And does your primarily what you're seeing these days, is it an age group, a specific gender that is more pronounced, or is it like really wide open?
Wide open. Yeah. I've dealt with many people in their 20s, male, female, any nationality. But then I've also done, and I've been doing this for a while, so I've also gone and done interventions on people that are my age. I'm 49, and dude was 50 years old, and that was just last year. You know, there's all different types of people, many types, and it's not just alcoholism or addiction; it's mental health too.
Are you and so they say yes, and you likely put a plan into place prior to the intervention. Hey, if so and so, that the young person, the kid, whatever we want to call it, says yes, what happens?
Well, obviously, I want to get all my ducks in a row before we even go into this. So when I'm talking to the families, I find out the person's status. Like, is the family willing to pay for treatment? Does the person have insurance? If they have insurance, what kind of options are we looking at, depending on the intervention? If the person's just primary mental health, well, then we're going to look at a mental health facility. If a person's got substance abuse, then we're going to, and dual diagnosis, then we're going to look for the appropriate center that I believe in, that does good work, and then just making sure that place takes their insurance. And then if the parents can actually afford it, sometimes parents don't want to use their kids' insurance because they're afraid that their name will be in medical records and things like that. So it'll appear in medical records or something like that. So they worry and they just say they'll pay out of pocket. So I just like to get it all lined up in advance and make sure that we know we're sending their loved one to the appropriate place.
Right. And so is there actually truth to that? Can that be substantiated if you've got a young person, let's just say, and they're facing their first episode of treatment, and or they're in the throes of addiction, they can reach out to you, and you can certainly link out something for them to just keep everything private, sounds like.
For sure. There's a lot of truth to it, because I've worked in the field of addiction pretty much like 10, 11, 12 years, almost all of my sobriety. So I've worked at really good centers, and I've worked at not so good centers. And I know the ones that I believe in. I know who provides good treatment. And I also like sending people to places that are 12-step heavy, abstinence-based, medication-assisted treatment, fine, whatever. But I have my own ideas about that. I talk about it on my TikTok all the time. You can check it out if you want. But it's called Pej Intervention. But I like to send people to a place where they're going to get real recovery, where they're going to be redirected in life, where they can get out of the facade and they can actually really, really work through all their traumas, whatever that may be, and become the person they were meant to be, rather than the facade that they were caught up in. So yes, there's a lot of truth. I've seen a lot of miracles happen.
Yeah, as have I, and I do agree with you that this setting needs to match the needs, and let's just not and I'm not saying you're saying this, but drill it down to rich people versus poor people and everything in between,
Right.
and line up. So interestingly enough, a middle class family here, very normal family. We have resources and insurance, but at the end, at 34, this is before the Affordable Care Act and all that. There was, not either you were employed or had insurance, and they sort of weren't handing out state insurance back then.
Right.
Yeah, I went to an indigent treatment center in Montgomery County. I mean, it turned out to be exactly what I needed.
I believe in indigent treatment. Sometimes I think sometimes people from well-to-do families they deserve to go to a place like that and clean a toilet to humble themselves. I believe in that because I went to a place that it wasn't the Ritz Carlton. It didn't have the amenities like looking at the beach, but definitely it was good treatment. Like there was just really good treatment that was provided there. And I'm happy that I had some straight shooters there that turned me inside out and showed me they put a mirror in front of me and it changed my life. I wonder if I went to a place that coddled you and was depending, they were like, depending on my PPO stellar insurance policy, like, no, just don't let him leave. Don't let him AMA. Like, let just be nice. It's okay. Just, he's all right.
Give him a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, give him a pack of cigarettes. Give him some vape juice. Like, give him Monsters or whatever, like energy drinks. So I've seen this industry evolve a lot over the years. There's a lot of places I really, really believe in, and I work on a national level. When I do interventions, like I'm not going to try to pull people out of like an East Coast area and bring them to California unless they totally have to be out of their element and it's better for them not to be back there. But there's a lot of places on the East Coast I work with, Midwest, and that I truly believe wholeheartedly in what they have to offer.
That's awesome that you're doing that today, and that you're able to meet certainly your clientele where they're at. I've heard a lot about certainly your community and your involvement in your community. The finer points of that, a large community, certainly as you mentioned, Orange County. Are you? Is that a particular subset of people that you find you can reach in particular because of the cultural aspects, I imagine?
Kabir, I like that you asked that question. You have to understand, like my Farsi, I spoke Farsi minimally growing up. Obviously within the house, it was just within the home. It was just simple words, simple conversations. I wasn't like super ultra fluent in it, but luckily that when I went to that Iranian recovery home, my Farsi improved like immensely, like really, really well, to the point where I was not only learning words that I'd never used before, but I was able to use them and think in that sense too. So when I started working in the field, I opened some places up in LA that were primarily Iranian and Armenian or Iranian Armenian recovery homes. So people started to realize that, and I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, but if you send them to Pejman's house or Pej's house, he has a way with these guys, and so a lot of people believe in my work ethic. They believe in the type of recovery that I try to deliver in these people's lives, because I went through a place where, like I said, my guy was the Persian Yoda. Like he taught me so much that I became like a Jedi, and I had to make sure that I did recovery as a man in recovery would. I want to be a man of recovery. That's what he used to always say. And so in our area, there's a lot of Iranians that are suffering. The older ones are taryak, like they call it taryak, but it's opiates.
Yeah.
It's opium, like they basically love to smoke opium. And then a lot of them get on methadone. So I saw a lot of that when I was newly sober. And then the youth, what I'm seeing more of these days, and I own some highly structured sober livings right now in South Orange County. I have probably 10 Iranian men in between the ages of 20 to 30 years old, all fentanyl. Yep. All fentanyl users, all of them. They were all overdosing. I have video footage. I have pictures that their mothers took of them overdosing. Like it's crazy. So yes, people, because it's these addictions have intensified and gone in all different directions right now, and these kids are running rampant in their addictive lifestyles, and they're using stuff that'll kill you in 5 minutes, Yeah, it's huge out here, and it's all over. And so they're always coming into my pathway, or I'm coming into theirs, depending on an intervention, or if people are just calling me saying, we want to send our kid to your houses.
Incredible. It was certainly a little bit, it sounded like a little more fun. You dropped a TikTok earlier on, so we know where to find you there. But these houses, how does someone find you?
Well, I mean, we just created some websites. I've been running sober living since I was newly sober. Like I was a manager for a while, and then down the line, I worked in a treatment center that had some sober livings attached to it. So I ran those houses, but I never got to run those the way I wanted to, because like I mentioned earlier, we don't want to lose the clients, Pej, because you're making a few extra tours and things like that. However, when I moved to LA and opened some places, that was great, but then I opened those with some partners, and then I parted my ways with those partners and moved to Orange County a while back. I live both in LA and Orange County. The houses I have are in South Orange County. It's Mission Viejo. It's Laguna Niguel and also Laguna Hills. Besides the websites, one is called Essence Home Recovery, and the other one is Limitless Journey House. And so people can call me, if somebody really is having a difficulty and their kid is not staying sober. They've gone through 20 treatment centers and their lives just aren't working for them. Treatment's just not working for them anymore. I believe that we provide an amazing structure. The individual needs to come in with a drug and alcohol free attitude, but we hold them accountable. We do everything that recovery consists of. I believe that our outcomes are sometimes even better than treatment, because there's not therapy and things like that there. This is basically a place where it's the last house on the block, and we're here to provide services to people of all different ages, creeds, colors. We've got them from 18 to 65.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, folks. Pejman joining us today from out on the West Coast. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. I hope you listeners have learned a little bit about the do's and don'ts of holding a successful intervention. You can certainly reach out to Pejman for his services if you don't want to do it yourself. If you or a loved one needs help with addiction, call Amethyst Recovery Centers today at 855-80-SOBER, or visit us online at amethystrecoverycenters.com. To hear all episodes of Share, visit amethystrecoverycenters.com/share, or download episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode. I'm Kabir Singh, and we'll see you next time.